Gentlemen, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Mike.
Good
to see you, Ken.
And Ken, Andy's been here before. Kisses Ken, VA3SK, who arguably was probably one of my Elmers when I was about 15. We've sort of known each other a while, and we were going to talk about Meteor Scatter today. So, I didn't prep Ken on this, but this video actually ends up also in YouTube for a while, so people can reference it in later time. So we try to be specific on how to get there. So we just finished a huge scatter session with, and I forgot which Leonoids? Geminids. And I wanted to bring Ken along too, because and his video may look a little thin because he's a perfect fit for my talk about wherever you have an amazing HF station, you have crappy internet. So he's got a little thin internet type at times. And so that's probably why it looks just a bit thin on the video, but that's okay. So we've all been doing Meteor Scatter for some time, but if you've the point here is you're already running FT8 on 6 meters or any HF band, and you've got some sort of 6 meter antenna, you can get involved in Meteor Scatter, and we're going to talk about it. Andy, I don't know, when was the first time you've done it?
Probably about 1.5 years ago, where I knowingly did it in digital mode. But prior to that, and I'll go back several years, it was CW on 6 meters.
Oh yeah, and Ken, I think you were saying it was a long time, right? For scatter.
Well, it was all started out with CW and sideband, probably very much like Andy did, and before the digital came along.
And there was the high-speed CW with the tape that you would record really fast and play back really slow, and then you would decode it and take all evening to do one contact almost.
Yeah, actually, my first exposure was I stopped at the 4U1 UN station in Geneva, and they let me into the station, and there was some Danish guys running high-speed Meteor CW skids using the tape method. So that was my first exposure, and that was back in mid-'80s.
Wow. And I mean, I guess you'd be excited if you made one contact a night or one QSO. It's not really a contact, but one, QSO by definition a night would be. And there's no time frame. Could it take you a couple of days to do a contact? All morning?
No, they would run for a minute and listen for a minute, and it was sort of a longer formatted of what their the MSK 144 is. So.
Yeah, Mike brings up a good point with regard to it taking place over the course of perhaps more than a day, and we can dig into that in a few minutes. I think Mike and Ken just kind of to lay the groundwork in terms of why this conversation now. Probably the important thing for us is that this is still the season for meteors, and we've actually got a pretty decent opportunity from about late April right through to the early part of January, where we can expect meteor showers. Compare that if you're a VHF enthusiast, or 6 meters, 2 meters in particular, to the limited lifespan that you might see for sporadic E, for example, and the lesser likelihoods of shoulder seasons producing something really cool. This is something that's available to us most of the year.
Yeah, and I'm going to use George as our straight man here. He asked a question, but we'll get to your question in a minute, George. And I'm finding personally, obviously the darker hours are better. It seems to be the morning, right, Ken? You've been having huge success on 2 meters in the morning.
Yeah, it's the anywhere after 6 when I get up at 6 o'clock, and between 6 and 9 o'clock seems to be a fairly good time.
That's consistent as well with what I experienced, and I'll go back to some of the showers that we had in the summer. I'm not surprised to see that Ken was on there bright and early. I get up relatively early in the summer, 4:30, 5 a.m. local time, and grab a coffee and sit down and watch things start to light up.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other reason I brought Ken around too is you do not need to be a big gun in this world. any 6-meter antenna, and Ken's experience and what his success actually with 2 meters. Describe your 2-meter station, because I think a lot of people will be surprised.
Well, I have an 8-element high gain 2-meter antenna, horizontally polarized, and I'm running an FT8 57 barefoot, and it's on 2 meters. It's rated for 50 watts. I'm running about 40 watts because I've backed it off. Just I'm not driving the ALC too hard, keeping the signal clean. So I'm running about 40 watts on 2 meters.
And you've been no problem. Well, scatter's hit and miss. It's like fishing, but you've done QSOs out 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah, you have to pick your time too. Usually what happens is I'll be on 6 meters, and if I see that there's lots of meteors, I'll swing over to 2. Just that, if I'm not hearing anything on 6, there's no sense going to 2. So the Geminids were a good example of what you can do, because I did work the Russian Marine Mobile Station out in the off Newfoundland on 2 meters. So if you're patient, it's amazing what you can do with 50 watts.
Right, and you don't need height, and you don't need a stacked array.
Actually, I don't know if height may not be an advantage at some point, because you don't want a zero takeoff angle. I think having a little bit of elevation doesn't hurt on your takeoff. So.
Ken brings up another good point. If things are good on 6, then there might be a chance on 2. We also have some folks that operate scatter on 222, and I mean that's a bit of a rare thing. And as we move up in the spectrum, we find less and less opportunity for enhancement by scatter. But 6 meters is certainly the hub of activity, and periodically we do see some activity on 10 meters, Mike.
I just muted Ken because of his wonderful grandfather clock, which you heard in the background. And we saw that on the 10 meter contest, right? You'd be working some CW. He's just about S3, S4. And then all of a sudden for 10 seconds, he's not. He's incredibly loud.
You mean the Worked All Kansas contest on 10 meters?
I thought it was Kansas and Missouri for us. I've had so many VE3 friends say that they worked all Kansas and Missouri. It was quite fun. George, you had a question, and this is George from Ham Radio Workbench. And what mode? Well, we use MSK 144, and we'll show you that in WSJT. I have a quick video that I shot this morning, and I can pause it in a couple of places, but let's put that screen up here. And what we've got here is on the left, I'm just going to show you the left-hand side of WSJT, and then we're going to look at a couple of settings. But this line right here, that's Meteor Scatter. Now, this is a really faint one, and sometimes there's really good zingers, and the screen lights up. And I don't know if I have some on this video, but we can start and stop. A couple of key settings you'll see over here on the in WSJT. If you want to keep notes, is you'll see this like an FT8, we've got a TX first or even. And the rule of thumb, if you're the Western station transmits first, if I remember correctly. So if you're trying to contact somebody to the east, then you'll be transmitting in first. Okay, so but what if you don't know which way you're scattering? Well, that's a really good question, and I don't have a really good answer. Although if you hear somebody calling CQ and you click on them like an FT8, you'll just follow their first or second format.
It's a good point, Mike, and I think maybe we should bring this up. We've kind of referred to the station as having a Yagi, but you know what? You don't need even something that sophisticated. I know one of our local VHF operators, VE3 SMA, Steve, who operates quite successfully with a dipole. And of course, there's a handful of folks from south of Lake Ontario here that are operating on halos on 6 meters. So just want to throw that in there. You don't need a lot of gain. You don't need a lot of directionality. But back to your point, sequencing is more of a gentleman's alignment as opposed to an exacting science.
Right. And the other thing, if you read through Joe Taylor's documents, or I can't remember if he told me or he published it somewhere, you can actually have multiple guys transmitting at the same time on the same frequency, as disturbing as that can sound. So if you're in an area where there's a high quantity of you, and you're all on the air at the same time, at least try to get on the same sequence so you're not really killing each other. And so here I brought up my screen right now, and mode MSK 144 and 50.260 are the standard stuff. This is actually a live screen for me right now. And I don't know where this noise just came from. I'm going to show you. This is not my normal 6-meter noise, but this is at my remote. That was perfectly clear at the top of the hour, so I suspect I have a neighbor in the direction I'm pointing is, well, they wouldn't be washing the car with a pressure washer today. It's about -10 outside. But so this that's the first second. FTOL is frequency tolerance. So it's I believe it's plus or minus 100 hertz. So it is good to be on frequency. So you want to watch other guys and see what they're showing up at. And you can see I'm GPS stabilized here, so my frequency is correct. We have W4IMD. If you're on the eastern seaboard of the United States, you will hear Larry. He's I don't know. He seems to be there a lot. So, but he's also a very good frequency reference. So we see a little bit of frequency shifting here, probably due to some Doppler. We were actually doing some research on that, on the impact of Doppler on 6 meters today. That discussion is quite interesting, but I don't want to get into it. And we see W1IPL as well. So if you're looking at, I think, Ken, when we first got you going on your 897, because it's an older radio, we came up with a bit of a correction factor, right? So you're actually off on your dial by a little bit. I think you've got to sort of dial in, but
yeah, it's correct now. But originally, I was about 150 hertz off, and I had to correct with the dial.
Yeah. So, and by the way, this number only goes to 200 hertz. If you have a computer that's not really powerful, then you may have to drop that down, because that does take more CPU time. This RX stays at 15, and the rest, we run a T/R sequence of 15 seconds. Andy, would I miss? You might want to go through auto sequence.
Auto sequencing basically will provide you with the exchange that you need to have, and it's really not all that much different than what you might expect through FT8. We can also go through a short sequence, contest mode short sequence, when we want to crank through some QSOs very quickly without sending large messages. And Mike, if we went to the settings for contesting and the configuration, there we go.
I'm going to click on advanced.
Okay. And down there, what you're going to do is put that up. Okay. And then you can go back and you'll find up on the front page there, you've got a short message SM there to the right of the contest box. I think, Mike, I can't see that so well.
I got short, and it comes up with shorts here, and North American VHF contest is turned on.
Perfect. I had to squint here to see
yeah.
that. All right. On top of that, Mike. Sorry.
Were you going to talk about Ping Jockey?
Yeah, let's talk about how do you set this thing up? Because the first thing you're going to say is, well, do I just call blind? Do I call CQ? Do I arrange a SCED with someone? Here's what you need to know.
Okay. I was going to bring up Ping Jockey. Did you want to see that?
Yeah, that's what.
Okay. We went back. Let's go back to this video first. So I'm going to play this. And what you want to watch for, and the audio should carry through into here. If it doesn't, I apologize. But watch, you're going to see under W4IMD, he's already in Acusa with Whiskey 9 Kilo X-Ray India. And I'm going to hit play, and I've shortened this all up a little bit. And then all of a sudden, by the way, did you hear that little I didn't decode that one. And there's the 73 that showed up. Now, if we play this a bit more, and we could talk over this one, Andy, as it keeps going, because there's no audio on the next part. But there are, and Ken, of course, when it gets there, I guess I have to hit play. You'll start to see some other signals come by. And there's a louder one. And that was another W4IMD saying 73, which terminates his QSO. And that's an RR73. So he's done. That's like I'm out, and he doesn't need to hear a reply. So that's what you're looking for. And by the way, this is on a flex screen, so you would also see it. And I tend to turn it off. I'll remove this for a minute, and I'll set up the next screen. I don't use the waterfall in WSJT, but because it's already built into our radios. Ken, by the way, Ken is a flex user. He uses a 6300, but on 6 meters, because his station is actually remote across the property, he has the FT897, 857 at the base of the tower. Right, you've got a nice short feed line.
Yeah, that's the only reason I have it up there. So.
All right, I'm going to bring up the Ping Jockey website, and I'll let Andy talk about that as well. It's been a while since I've logged in on the website.
So Ping Jockey is probably one of the more popular hangouts, if you will, for Meteor Scatter enthusiasts. You may find some folks using the ON4KST website as well, but for most of us here in North America, you'll find this to be pretty popular. So what you're seeing here, let's start up at the top. You can see NN6T is calling CQ on 50.265. So Mike, let's put a sticky here and come back to frequencies in a few minutes. Says It's going to be running 144, and basically what you see that happened at 2000 UTC. He ran for about 14 minutes, and he said he was clear of that. So it was good of him to let folks know that he was no longer calling. Futile if you were listening there, but apparently no one heard him there. What you're going to do is you're going to see some folks here providing some prompting. So let's go down to 1824. So at 1822.15, there is a signal that was received at minus 15. At 1503, someone was copying CQ from KB0, FHP, and FN20. So Larry K0 TPP copied that over an EM48RK. So good indication that you have some propagation as a result of the scatter. You can see the term ROX being used here, ROX. So K0TPP, by the way, is another big gun Meteor Scatter operator like W4IMD, and it's regularly heard on the bands. So basically what you're going to do here is you're going to arrange a QSO with someone, or get some information back that says, hey, you know what, your CQ is being heard, and maybe I'm going to call you. Let's try a SCED further up the band. Mike, let's talk, and Ken, let's talk a minute or two about frequencies and how we coordinate their use, and how we might use that with WSJT-X.
I was going to mention one thing first. Why don't I bring it up? How to use PSK Reporter to see if you're getting out.
Oh, so, good point. Good point. Yeah.
I'll bring that up while you get that. You didn't want. So PSK Reporter. We'll share the screen again, and I'm going to go look all bands. I'm going to look for me today, and say 6 meters on. And I can type my call sign in here, and say the last 12 hours and hit go. And then I'll zoom in on that so you can see it. If I saw something in Europe, I was going to hang up and you guys are over. So this is some of the contacts that I have either that have heard me, sent or received, both heard or I've heard in the last 6 hours. Now I know Ken was out all day, but he lives up here about 3 hours north of North Bay, and he heard me. And we look in the bottom. Let me zoom into this a bit more. It's a little bit easier to read. You can see Ken actually heard me up in FN06, by the way, which is a rare grid. How many other FN06 operators are there?
One.
One, you. Oh, Paul.
Paul.
Oh, VA3 Papa Charlie is another one. And so this is a good tool. So if you're not sure if you're getting out, this is a good place to go listen. And you can actually even do it to check your frequency. And I can go down here, I think, and check some of these others. And if you'll find out the GPS or the frequencies, the stations that are under some sort of frequency stability, it's a good place to also check frequency if you know who they are. And you can always ask on PSK Reporter, hey, what's going on? And you can make a sked, or you can just call blindly. Andy, where were we going to next?
Frequencies, but before we do go there, Mike, let's chat just a couple seconds more about PSK Reporter. So, as Mike's pointed out, the ellipses, they're showing you where Mike's signal was heard. You go down there and you can see Mike's signal report as well, just to the right of the MSK 144. The little dots or blobs there are stations that Mike has heard. One of the cool things about PSK Reporter is the information that you can collect and you can pass on to be of use to others, and that's something that we do with the Mississauga Amateur Radio Club station. When the station's not in use, we leave it idle on 6 meters, for example, during Meteor Scatter season, and we send that information to PSK Reporter so it can be displayed. But that information is also used by the HAMSI organization, who attempt to tie together events either in Earth's atmosphere, ionosphere, or space events to propagation anomalies or enhancements. So we're doing our little bit here when we do PSK Reporter and enable sending that information along. Just a quick plug on that. So
how does it get there? Is that a different setting?
Yeah, so if you want to just pop up WSJT-X again, Mike.
Let's try to find that window. Okay.
It's pretty simple. Basically, all it is a click box in the settings, and you'll be able to send that information along. Reporting, and down below you'll see network services, enable PSK Reporter spotting. That simple. Do us all a favor. Do us all a favor if you have a good internet connection and you don't mind leaving your receiver on, leave the program running. Send that information along. Make your contribution to science.
Thanks. Okay. All right. Let's check the notes because we actually have some
frequencies, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Y260, Y265, Y270. And how do we set WSJT-X up to do that?
Why don't you go ahead?
It's going to get busy, no doubt about it. What's that?
I just followed the flow. 260 being the general calling frequency in quiet areas.
In quiet areas. But here in the Greater Toronto area, in a steamy, sunny morning in June, it isn't so quiet. So what we try and do is spread out over the course of the spectrum. 265 and 270, for example, or other frequencies that you could use. The passband here is actually quite wide. You might want to, for example, go down below there as well. Mike's going to show you here how to set this up so that you can call CQ and let people know that you're listening on 250, for example.
Right. Let me just turn the amp off. But so the setup is identical to WSJ to FT8. You've probably already done that. I'm gonna. Which way am I pointing? Well, we could go look and bring that up, and I'm pointed about 200 degrees, which seems to be sort of a magic bearing for. And I can't explain why, but 210. But both you can say 210.
Mike, I have no explanation for that. Peter VA3 ELE had mentioned this in the past. He said, if we were going to leave the rotor anywhere overnight, where should we leave it? And Peter immediately responded and said 210 or 220. And he said, I don't know why, but it just happens that for where we are here in FN03, works particularly well to point in that direction.
And Ken, you told me the same thing every time. He was working a bunch of people, and I would WhatsApp him or Skype him. Which way are you pointing? He goes up 220.
Yeah, it seems to be the hot spot. Even for guys on the New England area, seem to be picked up on that heading. I don't know what it is.
Okay, doke. And just let me do something here. So again, it's no different. I'm going to, if I'm calling CQ, I'm going to hit my CQ here. I'm in CQ test. I'm going to turn off North American contest. I don't really need it for 6, but it's pretty common on today's 2-meter operation. If you were to do some 2-meter work, you'll probably see on Ping Jockey, some guy's going to say, CMSH, contest mode and short. And I'm going to, here's the short here and auto sequence. So we'll double click to erase everything. And I've got nothing set up, but while we're talking about it, I'm going to click CQ enable. And I'm on my Maestro here. So, I could show you going into transmit. We'll bring up the node red screen, which is right here. And we'll see we're running 10 watts. So we can run a lot more than 10 watts. And so that. Now I usually run upstairs and I get a ginger ale and come back and see how I worked. No, not quite that bad. But we can then, while we're doing this, because I'm going to let it run for a bit, we'll go back to PSK Reporter. It takes about a minute or two for things to show up. But we will see, whether I'm getting out. It's also quite an annoying, you tend not to leave monitor on very long on your radio, but it's probably a good idea to listen to it. It does use your whole transmitter bandwidth. Unlike FT8, which is 30 hertz wide, I think it's 2 kilohertz wide. I forgot the actual, but it's pretty wide. It takes the whole thing. I'll turn that off. And by the way, that if you ever accidentally turn that up in the middle of the night or when everybody's asleep, they will hear it. So, Andy, anything else you want to add? Ken?
There are a couple of questions, so let's grab those while we're waiting for PSK reporting. What mode are we using? MSK 144 less is the mode that you select in WSJT-X. What direction from Edmonton? Well, why don't you let us know what works? The general consensus here is 0.210, 0.220. But having not lived on the other side of the Great Divide, I'm really not sure whether that would apply for where you are. Chris KI1P, does it help to have any elevation on the beam? And I think, Ken, you alluded to that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, just because my antennas aren't very high, my takeoff angle is not 0. So, and a lot of the EME antennas are low as well. So, it doesn't hurt to. I wouldn't elevate the antenna on purpose, but it probably doesn't hurt to have a non-zero takeoff angle. But
I guess it depends too on if you've got a burn just over my head here. If you were aiming at it, would certainly reflect off the ionization trail. But is it then the other station might already be hearing you on ground wave anyway. So the idea is to get your signal beyond a ground wave pattern. So
I have tried it with about 5 or 6 degrees elevation on 2 meters. I really couldn't see any substantial benefit to it. The antennas that we're using at the club station are sufficiently high enough that the takeoff angle is not a big concern.
Okay. I'm doing 3 things at once here. What is 220? 220 degrees. That's about southwest.
Yeah, southwest.
I think Martin's looking for a sked.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna spin over to him, and I've turned the heat on, and so he's at. He's about 270 for me, and I'll bring that up. Share screen. And any more questions? So now, Martin, that's full power. By the way, and because this podcast or the YouTube you can watch, and multiple people from different countries will be watching. In Canada, I'm only limited to 750 watts. That better come up. It's under 750 in the next transmission. for digital modes. Those are 630. I'll pump it up a little bit. Oh, back down. And in the US, I think you're good for your full legal limit, and I don't know about the rest of the world, but we'll keep that in mind. So, Martin, if there's any sort of enhancement on 6, you have a chance of hearing me, or if your noise floor is quiet enough. And I guess we've pretty much covered most of it. We'll look at PSK Reporter in a minute, and I'll let this run for a second too.
It is an interesting mode of operation, no question about it. What we've discussed here today is kind of the basics you would want to understand before you get into it. If you're more fanatical about understanding the propagation modes and Meteor Scatter than the average high school physics student, then there's lots more to this than what we explored here today. And you know what? There are other pieces of software to use for Meteor Scatter. I think the popularity of WSJT-X is such that most anybody that has interests in digital communications will have that, and it's as Mike has shown you today, so deadly simple to get set up and get on the air.
Yep, and we're not even being heard on StreamYard by anybody, or StreamYard on PSK Reporter. There we go. So. Look at that, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
That's an interesting thing too. That path is pretty long. It's typical, 1,000 miles, not unusual. Do you see that type of propagation enhancement on sporadic E? Yeah, you do, but in all likelihood, you probably see a lot more activity down in that same area. So here we're looking at MSK. Mike's got, if you'll notice up in the top ribbon there, he's got it set to all modes. So if Mike was over on 50.313, for example, and not using MSK and was using FT8, then maybe we'd see a whole bunch of other signals. But I suspect there was a bit of a shower there at some point in time that allowed the enhancement to get down there.
That's really interesting. Read this carefully. I am not, this has got to be some data corruption. I'm not on 313.
I don't think that. I think in that case it might be a station that's listening, but didn't necessarily an active listener, but didn't necessarily hear you.
Okay.
So
by the way,
look for the darker red blobs there.
Look at this.
Oh, who's that? Who are we in sequence with?
Kilo 4 Mike Yankee.
In Echo Mike 74.
So while that's finishing its queue, so I'm not touching it.
Don't touch that. But let's have the SDR screen up there. Let's have the band scope pan adapter up and see what's going on here.
So while we're doing that, Ken, the next question is for you.
6 meters is absolutely easier than 2 meters. So I've been what I've done with 80 watts on 6 meters and 5 element is just phenomenal. I've been able to work just about anything on 6 meter Meteor Scatter, and it's good to do when the sporadic E season is not there. It gives you something to do. So 2 meters is a lot tougher than 6 meters. The amount of meteors that work on 2 meters is a lot less than 6 meters. The duration of the signals is less on 2. So 6 meters is where I got my start, and I would recommend anybody to start on 6. And then if they want to be punished, then they can go to 2 meters.
Yeah, speaking of punishment, I think if it hasn't been said, or if it's unsaid, it needs to be said. make sure you got a pot of coffee on, and make sure you bring your patients, because as you can see right here, these QSOs may take a little while to complete. And in fact, it isn't unusual. Let's say Mike gets this halfway through the sequence, shuts down for the evening, sparks up tomorrow morning, that the other station will begin into the sequence again and finish the QSO. So in the course of some silent period, there's maybe the opportunity that propagation is enhanced by a meteor shower again, and away you go.
And right now, this is actually a bit unusual. This is actually the quiet time. It's not impossible, as we saw, but with a shower going on, 6 meters. I turned it on Sunday night, and it looked like the middle of 6 meter FT8 season on Meteor. It was just unbelievable. So, and you can always, if you're not doing anything with the radio, you can just turn it on and listen, and see what happens. I'm gonna probably terminate this. What's the amp up to temperature? Oh, it's up to 44 degrees, and then I need to heat up the cabinet. Everything's in. It's only at 9 degrees because outside it's -7 Celsius. What am I using for shack control? Oh, Tyler, if you get into this, it's Andy. It's I'll throw. We actually just got Ken into Node Red, but
how quickly did we get you into Node Red? I think Mike and I were in.
We were in the car.
We were in the car.
I was talking to you on a Saturday, and then by Sunday I had my my filter switching program running. So.
Tyler, just a couple of tips. So if you want, there's an IO groups or groups.io, pardon me, for Node Red. So Google that up, join that if you are interested in Node Red. This particular application Mike has hosted on a Raspberry Pi, and you can do all kinds of awesome data collection, aggregation, manipulation, and automation with Node Red. It's, again, very simple to use, drag and drop logic, very visual in terms of putting that logic flow together, and you get something that looks quite intuitive as a user interface. Also point out, if you do have an interest in Node Red or experimenting with Flex, or operating Flex, we do have a DMR talk group. It's DMR talk group 30234.
On Brandmeister.
On Brandmeister, yes. And there's beginning to be quite a number of stations that are hanging out there. So if you're getting into Node Red, it's a good place to listen as well.
And those, I described it as software for electrical people, because you end up wiring nodes and things together. And I'm not a programmer, although I could debug code. I can read it mostly, sort of, maybe, but I was hugely successful on Node Red, and I got to thank Andreas N6NU for getting me going with it, and then a couple other people jumped on the bandwagon. And so this is, for years I've been running remote since 2005, and for years I've wanted all my stuff on one application. And this is just a web page, by the way. It's just Chrome and what's called kiosk display. And I can look at that on here, on any screen that connects to this Raspberry Pi, even my iPhone or any device that's got a web browser in it. So, but maybe we're gonna have to save that for another whole show. I think we've done one, but we may have to do it again in some more details. We've gotten smarter. I actually started playing around 80. I didn't get so successful that if this case temperature gets really hot, that the background goes red, and if it gets really cold, it goes blue, and sort of thing. So that's all we have today. Any cross-link to Fusion? Don, no, for chatting. And I think the three of us also have a bit of a career in repeaters as well, but so that's Node Red. There are probably some gateways, but I'm not on top of them anymore.
Yeah, Tyler, 30234. QSL?
All right, gentlemen, ladies, because I don't know who's around, and thanks for taking the time to join us. Any questions, you can Just email me at info@flexradio.com. I probably have a banner for that somewhere, and that will pop up. And if you want anything to go to these two guys, I'll get it to them, or I'm sure their QRZ address is always available. Well, it's not so secret anyway, but it's never, to be honest, it's never been abused. So,
and one of the other things I think is worthy of doing, get things sparked up, have a listen, and when you're ready to go, get on Ping Jockey, and don't be shy about letting the other stations on Ping Jockey know that you're a newbie. You'll get some excellent coaching there. There's all kinds of technical expertise there. There we go. Mike got into a good conversation earlier today with respect to Doppler. So.
Yeah, not only that, there's a client for Ping Jockey, so you don't have to use a web page. But K4MY actually got back to me because he got one decode from me, and so I know whether to keep going or do you want, so you can communicate your intent, and that's what Ping Jockey's for. There's 3 or 4 ways to communicate throughout the world on things like this. There's Ping Jockey. There's a website called ON4KST. If you're a Slack user, there's a VHF Slack group. And what was the 4th one? Because Peter just turned me onto it, where all the EME guys are.
HB9Q.
Yeah, HB9Q's the EME one.
So there's just some options. All right. Well, thanks. I hope everybody's safe. Let's get through the next few months, and please stay out of whatever you need to stay out of, and have a good Christmas or whatever you observe. And for us in the Northern Hemisphere, we'll try to stay warm. And thanks again.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Ken. And stay safe,
thanks,
everyone. We'll look for you on the air.
Take care. 73.
7-3.
Good DX.